I knew something was wrong the moment the bitterness hit my tongue. It was subtle, almost like oversteeped tea, but it lingered. Unnatural. As I sat at the dinner table, pretending to laugh at my brother Jake's latest brilliant idea for the company, I stared down at the steaming cup in front of me. That taste. This wasn't the first time. I'd been sick for weeks. Months, really. Constant nausea. Headaches that wrapped around my skull like a vice. Fatigue that clung to my bones no matter how much I slept. I'd gone to 2 doctors already. Blood work, scans, food diaries. All normal. They called it stress. Overwork, maybe depression. But I knew my body. And now I knew this taste. I was being poisoned. It's terrifying how quickly your world turns. One second, you're sipping tea in your parents' perfect dining room in the Gold Coast of Chicago, and the next, you're mentally counting every meal you've eaten in this house for the past year. I forced a smile as my mom leaned over and asked if I liked the tea. It's different, I said carefully. Oh? Same kind as always, she replied too quickly. Maybe I left the bag in too long. Jake chuckled. You're just dramatic, Em. I stared at him, wondering if he knew. I'm Emily. I'm 27 years old, and I've worked in my parents' marketing firm since I was 21. I earned my degree 2 years early. I brought in our biggest tech client before I turned 24. I'm the reason this company is still relevant. Everyone knows it. Everyone but my parents. They love Jake. Always have. He's 2 years younger than me, less driven, less talented, but charming. The golden child. The one they introduced at parties as the future CEO long before he even finished college. And I was the one who worked too hard, who took things too seriously. The one who never smiled enough in meetings. The one who, despite outperforming everyone, was still just a stepping stone in Jake's path to greatness. Lately, my body had become a prison. I could barely get out of bed most mornings. I canceled client meetings. I made mistakes. Small ones, but noticeable. My parents began asking if I needed time off. To heal, they said. To recharge. Now I know what they really meant. I excused myself early from dinner, clutching my stomach. My mom looked concerned, but not surprised. I poured the rest of the tea into a travel mug before I left, sealing the lid tight. If I was right, and I hoped to God I wasn't, this would prove it. But deep down, I already knew. My parents were poisoning me, and I was going to find out why. The next morning, I sat in my apartment, staring at the travel mug from last night. The tea inside was still cloudy, swirling slightly as I tilted it. I hadn't dared to open it. Not yet. Just seeing it made my stomach turn. But I knew it was more than paranoia. I had patterns, symptoms, and now, finally, a sample. I started going back through my calendar, my phone, my emails, any trace of when I started feeling sick. That's when the pattern emerged, clear as day. Every time I'd felt nauseous or dizzy, it was after a meal at my parents' house, or after one of Mom's little treats. Homemade muffins, her famous lavender lattes, her endless concern masked as hospitality. The timeline matched. I tried to dismiss it. Who would even think of doing something like this to their own daughter? But once you see the cracks, you can't unsee them. I called Dr. Natalie Chen, my oldest friend, and conveniently, a brilliant internal medicine specialist. We met in college. She was the only person who didn't look at me like I was insane when I told her what I suspected. I'm not saying you're definitely being poisoned, she said slowly. But chronic low-level symptoms like this could come from certain toxins, heavy metals, pesticides, even some lab-grade chemicals. Would you test it for me? She hesitated. If you can get it to me discreetly, I'll run a private tox screen. But Emily, this is serious. If you're right, I know, I whispered. And if I'm wrong, I'll sleep better. That night, I drove to her clinic after hours and handed her the mug in a brown paper bag. No names, no details. Just 2 women pretending like this was normal. The next few days were torture. I couldn't stop overanalyzing everything. Every interaction with my parents, every sip of coffee they offered, every smile that suddenly felt more like a mask. On Thursday, I went back to their house to pick up some old contracts from the office. My mom insisted on making me a cappuccino, just like old times. I accepted it with a smile, then slipped into the hallway and dumped it into a potted plant the second she turned away. I made my way into Dad's office while they were distracted. I hadn't been in there for a long time. He'd always kept it locked unless Jake or I had meetings. But this time, the door was slightly ajar. And that's when I saw it. A small glass bottle, half filled with a pale amber liquid, sitting near the printer beneath a stack of old invoices. The label read, "For laboratory use only, not for human consumption." My hands were shaking as I picked it up. No brand name, no ingredients, just a warning. I snapped a photo and carefully returned it to its place, heart pounding. What the hell were they doing? That evening, I confronted Jake. Not directly, not yet. We were grabbing a drink near the office, something we hadn't done in months. "So," I asked casually, "Mom and Dad still think you're the next big boss?" Jake laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Oh, you know how they are." "Jake, you've got such charisma." "Jake, you're a natural leader." I smiled tightly. "They said anything about me?" He hesitated. "Well, they're worried about you, with your health and everything. Mom said maybe you need a break." "A break?" "Like, a long one. She told me not to worry too much because I guess you'll step back eventually. She said something like, Emily will come to her senses soon." He paused. Honestly, I thought that was kinda harsh. I stared at him. "Did she say why she thinks I'd step back?" He shrugged. "Just that you've been sick all the time. That maybe you're realizing this life isn't for you." That's when it hit me like a punch to the chest. They weren't just waiting for me to fail. They were making sure I would. This wasn't stress. This wasn't burnout. They wanted me gone. And they were willing to poison their own daughter to make it happen. I don't know how I kept it together during the rest of that conversation. I laughed in the right places, nodded like I agreed. But the entire time I was screaming inside. Jake didn't know. I was almost sure of that. He wasn't sharp enough to lie like this. But he was being played just like I was. Only his role was the chosen one. As I left the bar, my phone buzzed. A message from Natalie. "Results in. You were right. We need to talk." I stood on the sidewalk, my heart thudding in my chest like a war drum. This was no longer a suspicion. It was real. And now I needed a plan. The morning after Natalie confirmed the results, I stared at my reflection for a long time. The woman in the mirror didn't look like me. Pale, tired, a shadow of who she used to be. But her eyes were on fire. The tea had tested positive for a low-dose compound. Something similar to thallium, Natalie said. It wouldn't kill me, but it would destroy me slowly. Memory loss, weakness, confusion, gut issues. If I hadn't caught it, I would have been bedridden in a year. Maybe worse. I had no more doubts. But suspicions weren't enough. I needed evidence. Undeniable proof. And if I was going to confront my parents, I had to play the long game. The next time my mom invited me over for Sunday brunch, I accepted. She made my favorite, spinach quiche and her signature hazelnut coffee. I watched her closely as she handed me the cup. Warm smile, flawless delivery, no tremble in her fingers. She was calm, practiced. I raised the mug to my lips, took a slow sip, then smiled and said, "Delicious." She beamed. "I'm so glad you're feeling better." Little did she know I'd swapped the coffee into a dark thermos in my purse when she wasn't looking. This was test number 2. That night, I met Natalie at the back entrance of her clinic again. I handed her the thermos and she gave me a tight nod. She didn't even need to ask. She could see it in my face. I was all in now. We agreed to keep a chain of samples. Every drink, every visit. Natalie would store duplicates in her private fridge at the hospital where she worked. Quietly, legally, just in case. But that wasn't enough. I needed to hear them say it. So I bought a voice recorder. It was cheap and small, barely larger than a USB stick. I hid it behind a row of dusty novels in the living room bookshelf, right where my parents sat every evening, sipping wine and rehashing their day. I told them I was staying the night because it felt nice to be home again. They seemed thrilled. I wondered if they thought I was finally giving up. That evening after dinner, I pretended to be asleep upstairs. I listened through the vents as they poured drinks and settled into their usual spots by the fireplace. Then they began to talk. Not loudly, but clearly. "She looks better," my mom said. "Stronger. She's been drinking less," my father muttered. "You need to keep her on schedule." "She's stubborn," she sighed. "But if she misses a few more client meetings, the board will start asking questions, and Jake's been picking up the slack nicely. Give it another few weeks, she'll resign. She's proud. She won't want to be seen failing. Let's hope she does it quietly." I lay there in bed, frozen, bile rising in my throat. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was deliberate, calculated, cold. They were trying to erase me. The next day, I retrieved the recorder and played the file over and over until the words burned into my skull. I sent a copy to Natalie and uploaded another to an encrypted cloud drive, just in case something ever happened to me. I began documenting everything: times, dates, symptoms, who handed me the food or drink, how I felt within the hour. I kept it all in a hidden journal and photographed each page for backup. I also planted a second recorder, this one in my father's office. I wanted to know if there were any financial motives I hadn't seen yet. And then, something unexpected happened. Jake called me. "Hey," he said. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, why?" "I don't know. You've been weird lately." I smiled faintly. "Just tired." He hesitated. "Mom and Dad were talking yesterday. I think they want me to lead that presentation next week. You know, the tech merger? That's your area now, right?" "I mean, it used to be yours." I let the silence hang for a beat. "Jake, do you want to run the company?" Another pause. I I guess. I mean, if you're stepping back." I didn't say anything. "You are stepping back, right?" "No," I said quietly. "Not yet." The silence on his end felt colder this time. I hung up, heart racing. I didn't want to hate him. He'd always been the golden boy, but never cruel. But now I wondered if he was choosing ignorance, or if he was finally starting to see the rot beneath our family's polished surface. A few days later, Natalie called with the new lab results. "Same compound," she confirmed. "Same dosage. Emily, this isn't random. It's being controlled." I closed my eyes. "I know." She hesitated. "You need to decide what to do next. Do you want to press charges?" "Not yet," I said. "Not until I get everything." I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to burn the lies to the ground. So I staged one more test. This time I didn't drink the coffee. Instead, I brought my own and poured hers into my flask while she answered the door. I smiled and talked and laughed through breakfast like nothing was wrong. And then, just before I left, I said something that made her flinch. "Hey, Mom, if I ever do decide to step down, I want to write the press release myself. After all, I built this place, didn't I?" Her smile twitched, just slightly, but I caught it. She nodded. "Of course, sweetheart." That night, I reviewed the new recording from the living room. More talk about timing, about Jake stepping in, about how Emily's not cut out for this anymore. It was all falling into place. They were waiting for me to break, but I wasn't breaking. I was building my case, piece by piece. I had all the pieces, the test results, the recordings, the samples, the timelines. It was time to bring everything together. One final move. My parents had carefully, methodically tried to destroy me. They wanted me gone. broken, forgotten. But they underestimated just how far I'd go to survive and to win. I invited them to dinner. It wasn't unusual. I said I wanted to celebrate feeling better and suggested we eat at the family home for a sense of comfort and normalcy. My mother was delighted. My father was suspicious, but he agreed. Jake was out of town on a business trip, which was perfect. I cooked. I insisted. I didn't trust anything they'd make anymore, so I took over the entire meal. Roasted salmon, steamed vegetables, garlic rice, and for dessert, creme brulee, my mother's favorite. I poured them wine from their own collection and served myself water. But what they didn't know was that I'd added a few drops of the same compound, taken from the bottle in Dad's office, into my own plate. Just enough to trigger symptoms I already knew well. I wasn't actually ingesting it. I'd carefully lined my mouth with a harmless numbing agent beforehand and would spit most of it out later. But it would be enough to sell the scene. Everything else was ready. My phone was recording from a hidden angle behind a centerpiece. I had backup audio recording from the shelf behind them. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times. Halfway through dessert, I clutched my stomach and winced. My mother looked up, her fork pausing midair. "Sweetheart?" "I don't feel so good," I whispered. "Like before." My hands trembled as I reached for my glass. Sweat began to bead on my forehead, and I leaned back in my chair. My breathing slowed, then became shallow. And then I let my head roll to the side. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let the silence stretch until it was nearly unbearable. My mother was the first to speak. "Is she unconscious?" she whispered sharply. "Looks like it," my father replied. "That dose was small. She'll come around." "We can't keep doing this, Stephen," she hissed. "What if she finds out?" "She already suspects. She's been faking it the last few weeks. She's not drinking the tea." "She'll ruin everything if she talks. Jake isn't ready yet." "He'll learn. She's a liability now. The board is watching. We just need her to resign." My stomach twisted. Not from the act, but from the confirmation. My own parents, plotting like villains in a soap opera. She was never supposed to run the company this long. My mother added. We agreed Jake would take over, that she'd just hold things until he matured. "She's too competitive," my father muttered. "Doesn't listen, doesn't delegate. And the staff prefers her, that's dangerous." "People respect her," my mom snapped. "But a man in charge looks better to investors. They trust male leadership more." That was it. That was the real motive, not my health, not my mental state, just that Jake had a Y chromosome. I'd heard enough. I came to slowly, gasping and clutching my side. They both jumped. "Emily," my mother shrieked. "You fainted, sweetie." I sat up slowly, blinking as if confused. What happened?" "You must have had a spell. Maybe your blood sugar?" my dad said, trying to mask his panic. "I need to lie down," I murmured. "Just give me a minute." I stood shakily and walked out of the dining room, pretending to stumble. As soon as I reached the hallway, I turned and went into my childhood bedroom, where my laptop was waiting. I uploaded the footage and watched it. Clear audio, clear faces, no denials left. Game over. 10 minutes later, I returned to the dining room. Their wine glasses were untouched. My mother looked tense. My father was already reaching for his phone. "Before you call anyone," I said calmly, "maybe watch this." I pressed play and turned the screen toward them. The moment they heard their own voices, conspiring just minutes earlier, my father paled. My mother stared at the screen as if she were watching someone else. "What is this?" she whispered. "Oh, just a little insurance," I said, in case I didn't make it. "This is illegal recording," my dad began. "It's admissible in Illinois," I interrupted. "One-party consent, and I am the party. You poisoned me, multiple times. I have blood work, I have toxicology, I have samples, recordings, and eyewitness confirmation." "Emily," my mother said, trying to rally her usual calm, You've been under so much stress lately. You're clearly. No, I snapped. Don't gaslight me. Not this time. They went silent. You tried to make me step down by ruining my body. You wanted me out because I didn't fit your mold, because I wouldn't roll over and let Jake take everything I've built. We just wanted what's best for the company, my father said, but it was weak, hollow. No, I said. You wanted what was easiest for you. A son you could control. A narrative that didn't include a daughter who was smarter, stronger, and more respected. My mother's lips trembled. We didn't mean to hurt you. You did hurt me. You watched me suffer, and you kept going. I let the words sit between us. I wanted them to feel the weight. I could press charges, I continued. I should. Their eyes widened in unison. But I won't. Not yet. Because I want you to live with what you've done. Every day. Knowing that I survived you. That I beat you. I turned to leave, but then paused. Oh, and by the way, I'm stepping down. But not from the company. From you. And I walked out. Out of that house. Out of their reach. Out of the cage they tried to lock me in. The night I left, I didn't pack a bag. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked. My legs moved before my brain could catch up. Every step down that familiar sidewalk felt like shedding a layer of skin. My childhood, my loyalty, my pain, all of it peeled away, piece by piece. I went straight to the police station. I sat in a stiff plastic chair under cold fluorescent lights and told an officer everything. The recordings, the samples, the motive. I gave them copies of everything, digitally and on a flash drive. They took my statement. They listened. And then they asked the question I knew was coming. Do you want to press charges? I hesitated, because yes, they deserved it. They deserved prison, headlines, humiliation. But they were still my parents. Twisted, selfish, destructive. But mine. No, I said. I just want it on record, in case they ever try this with someone else. The officer gave me a long look and nodded. It was done. But the real fight was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, I cut off all contact. I blocked their numbers, ignored their emails. Jake was the only one I spoke to, and that conversation nearly broke me. He showed up at my apartment unannounced. I saw the footage, he said before I could even greet him. I confronted them. Jesus, Emily. His face was pale, eyes red. I didn't know. He kept repeating, I didn't know. I believed him. He wasn't blameless. He benefited from the system they built, but he hadn't created it. And when it cracked, he stepped away. I can't be part of this, he said. Not the company. Not them. He resigned a week later. The press didn't know the full story, but whispers spread. Investors grew nervous. Rumors of internal scandal. Leadership conflict. A sudden restructuring. In less than a month, 3 major clients left the firm. 2 of them came to me. I launched Eclipse Strategies from a co-working space downtown. Small team, clean slate, fresh air. The name was a reminder. Even the sun gets covered sometimes, but only for a moment. I wasn't aiming for revenge. Not exactly. I just wanted to build something real. Something mine. But clients followed me like a tide. They'd seen my work. They knew my worth. And the second they heard I'd gone independent, they reached out. Quietly, urgently, loyally. Within 6 months, we'd tripled our projections. By the 1-year mark, we were leading 2 national campaigns and had offices in 3 cities. My name was on the door. My voice in every room. My face on every stage. I was no longer the shadow behind someone else's throne. I was the empire. And what of them? My parents' firm, once sleek and powerful, was now barely holding on. Staff turnover was brutal. Leadership scandals whispered in the halls. With Jake gone and investors wary, they tried rebranding, tried recruiting younger talent. But something had cracked. and everyone could feel it. Last I heard, they were down to half their clients. My father had stepped down for health reasons. My mother rarely left the house. I didn't feel joy when I heard, but I did feel peace. One evening, nearly a year to the day since the dinner that changed everything, I stood in front of a room full of young entrepreneurs. I was giving a talk about resilience, about building from the ground up. Someone asked, "What was the hardest thing you ever walked away from?" I smiled, slowly. "People who said they loved me," I said, "but only if I stayed small." There was a hush in the room. No follow-up needed. After the event, I walked out into the cold night and looked up at the skyline. Chicago glittered around me, sharp and alive. It didn't feel like the same city anymore, because I wasn't the same woman. They tried to erase me, but I rewrote the ending, and I made sure my name was permanent ink. Looking back, it still feels surreal that the people who raised me also tried to erase me. That love and betrayal can live in the same house, sit at the same dinner table, pour you the same poisoned cup of tea. But here's what I've learned. The best revenge isn't rage. It's rebirth, not screaming, but thriving. I didn't destroy them. I simply outgrew them. And the silence I left behind was louder than any courtroom sentence. If you're watching this, if something deep inside you whispers that something isn't right, listen, even when it's family, especially when it's family. Don't wait for permission to protect yourself. Your instincts are your armor. Your happiness is your shield. And your success? That's your loudest, sharpest weapon. They wanted me gone. But I'm still here. And I'm just getting started. Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more unbelievable real-life stories.